So, all right. Well, thanks for having me on the show there
What would
today.
you like to talk about today?
Well, a few things. A couple things we'll touch base on. So, those of you who don't know, I'm going to kind of reveal because it's the brokerage that I work for. So, the brokerage I work for is called SPI Logistics. Okay. So they're based out of Canada, but we have offices all around. We have 65 agent offices around the United States and Canada. Some of the agent offices are like myself, where there's one person or one and a half person. We have several that are solo agents, but we have several offices that have 2, 4, 6, 8 people. So we got a variety. We got agents all the way across Canada from BC to Quebec. We have agents in Idaho through to Illinois, Texas, Florida, all around Colorado, Utah. They're all over the place. So we do a thing once a year. It's called Rendezvous. And each year we rotate. 1 year is in Canada, 1 year is in the United States. And there is a thing for qualifying for sales and so forth. But the point of the rendezvous is that we gather. We have some industry information. We have some panels where we had, like on the Friday night, there was a agent panel. So they had some of the top agents there. And if you wanted to be a part of that, you submitted your questions and there was a host to guide through that. And then like Saturday morning, we had a management panel. So we have management there. We got, VP of sales, the president, VP of technology, as a VP of operations for people and operations, Anita Watts. So and James Lemon, our VP of finance. So we have the whole people there. We have questions that were submitted, so you got a chance to listen, and a few other questions added in there. And then we had a special guest, Scott Cornell, with Cargo Theft. What's his company called? Cargo Theft Insurance. And we'll get into that in a bit. But, when they talk about surround yourself with successful people, well, that's a weekend. This past weekend in Tennessee was a weekend to surround ourselves with successful people. And part of the purpose of that this past weekend was this past Saturday, which was May the 4th, was the exact 45th anniversary of SPI Logistics, that they've been around for 45 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
I did not realize that.
Yeah. And one of our co-founders, Jim Taggart, he passed away this year, battled to cancer. But Mitch Helton's still around. And Mitch is a super, super smart person. And there's a lot of smart people there. So I wanted to kind of come on and share some stuff that they shared, their insights, their perspectives on the market, talk a fair bit about cargo theft. And they, because we're all independent agents. We have a whole head office. We got, client care team. We've got an accounts payable team. We've got an accounts receivable team. We have Peter, who's our VP for our legal. Like if we have a contract with a customer or there's a claims issues that are complicated, Peter gets involved. So being part of the SPI Logistics as an agent, we have agents that are doing a fair, I'm not going to brag how much they're doing, but SPI in the world of brokeraging in the United States is a top 85 freight brokerage. We fall into the top, we're a top 85. It's in our logo. So the point is, I always keep saying to myself, well, geez, some of these agents have 6, 8 people in their team and they do phenomenal business. They could easily be on their own, but why haven't they merged and broke out and gone on their own? Why? People, technology, support. Mm-hmm. They're able to focus on their customers and moving freight. Most of 2023 may have been frustrating for some of the agents, but SPI spent significant time putting things in place because the amount of bad actors out there, bad carriers, was just rampant upon rampant.
Yeah.
And so they had to spend a lot of time on technology, and that includes highway. Love or hate highway, highway's doing a lot of things that no one else is doing, and they're catching a lot of people that no one else is doing. So you may have a perspective that you don't like it. Well, I can do a separate video or a separate call to show you otherwise. And if you sat behind my seat for a day, you would say, "Oh, now I see why you like highway so much." So,
Yeah, you
and it's
definitely get a good glimpse. So,
yep. And so the whole summary is that I'll put this caveat: if you're a one truck MC holder and you have your little corridor that you've niched out for yourself, you've got either some great brokers or a direct shipper, and you have good life, meaning you have great contacts, everything, you're getting paid what you feel is your worth, and you have a good system, you get home, etc., on reasonable times, um, and you feel that what you're doing is good and sustainable, then you're an anomaly, right? If you've set yourself up that way. The points I'm going to bring are particularly for those that bebop the spot market or bebop around from load to load chasing money. Um, that I believe, first and foremost, in 2024 and moving forward, doing things, they specifically said this to message to us, right from our president. If you're saying to yourself, this is how we've always done it, you're stagnant. You're not going to keep up. You have to open your eyes. It's 2024. There's a lot of new ways to get business done. And we have to really open our eyes and be willing to be flexible to these different scenarios. Okay. So if you're just a one carrier right now, and the reason that this comes up, I unfortunately, I wish I had the exact details, and maybe Steve, you can interject what you know, but I think Sage has some in here. But there are some new safety fitness determinations coming soon. And what that's going to do is it's going to bring down some capacity, right? It's going to reduce some of the capacity of trucks. So if you get a conditional status because of these new standards, once you get a conditional status, that eliminates 75-80% of the brokers that you can work with until you fixed it, and it can take a couple of years to get off of that status. So as you know, with your inspections and everything else, it's a numbers game. If you have one truck and you have one bad inspection, well, you're failing 100%, right? So the whole point is that right now, our management believes that a price correction is going to be coming. General rule is that the current spot market rates are about 50 cents behind the additional cost that U.S. carriers are incurring, which I think you and I kind of discussed that that's probably somewhat fair.
yes.
So they feel that right now, just like you guys are saying, the rates aren't where they should be, and there's still too many trucks on the marketplace. So one, there's going to be the new safety fitness determinations is going to bring out some of the carriers. It's going to reduce some of the carriers because it's going to run them out of business that way. Then essentially, we expect that in the coming months, I'm not sure it's going to be exactly this year, but we're going to see some pricing, the rates go back up, which is excellent for you, what you guys want to hear. I can't give you the exact timeline, but all I can tell you, you need to get deep in your relationships. And what I mean is, remember this in sales. People think it's about who you know, but rather, who knows you? I've been on Steve's show. I've been on DIY Semi, and we've discussed this about marketing as a carrier. What can you do? We've brought up many things. You could have a specific channel for your business. You can create a website. You can do email blasts to educate your truck availability, your services. There's a variety. A LinkedIn website. The amount of data that we can scrub from highway to get a picture about a carrier is pretty significant until you spend time. And the reason I bring that up, in the past 6 weeks, more of my time on a daily basis is wasted. And I'll use the word wasted. I get a load and I need to quote a customer or find a truck for. I don't even post because there's so many bad actors. I have to vet. Like if I'm trying to, even if I'm searching for trucks, I look up, not qualified, bad actor, another bad actor. Just yesterday, I have Cleveland, Ohio. After I get off this call, I got a book. Cleveland, Ohio to Broussard, Louisiana, 53 drive-in. I talked to Steve first. He didn't have any, so then I posted it. First carrier, iffy at best. Second carrier, the message was, this carrier is known to be using an insurance agent that services carriers who double broker freight. So it's just bad actors. Like the other day, I was looking for a carrier. I think I burned through over 25 carriers to find 3 that are qualified for a flatbed load. So that's where my time is going, because these carriers, and there's many things, I can't reveal every little detail about what Highway's telling us, but I can say, and we've talked about this before, if you own your own authority in your one truck and you're using a Gmail, immediately this morning, call Microsoft or Gmail or Google and get yourself a domain email. Number one thing. But there's a consequence to this, though, because if you set yourself up on the FMCSA with a Gmail or Outlook or Yahoo email on the FMCSA, and you have to make an email change, that will put you out of business with a lot of brokers for several months in some cases. When there's an FMCSA change, that's considered high risk of fraud, and there's possibly fraudulent activity going on. So it's negatively looked upon. But
Wow.
there's a lot of factors at play. But if you haven't switched that over, and you know this as well, but the Gmails and Outlooks, that's for our personal use, not for business use. And that's pure and simple. I cannot emphasize that enough. Cyber is a big thing, that basically every 20 seconds, there's a cyber breach of some sort in the world, like in North America. We'll get into this in a moment. I want to touch just a little bit about the who knows you versus who you know. Because the most important thing in where is that little book? Hang on, I'll pull it. Actually, it's right there. It's in that spot there. There's a little book of red sails, and in there it says it's not about who you know, but who knows you. So if you have your own authority, go on the internet and type up your carrier's name. How findable are you? So if a broker was to look up, what's your key lanes? What's the lanes you like to run? And type in drive-in carriers from that lane to this lane. Are you findable? If you're not, then you need a website. You need hire someone to help you. And the other thing that I can't emphasize enough, I've talked about it before, but deep selling. There is a lot of bad actors out there. And if you're a good carrier, you need to get yourself heard. You need to get yourself so that people know you, so that you stand out above the crowd. And it's really unfortunate, but in certain lanes, like this Cleveland, Ohio to Broussard, Louisiana, I'm working on, almost all the carriers posted are Illinois. So Illinois has a huge amount of bad actor carriers known to double broker, etc. So there it is, little book of red sails. And so my suggestion is, whether you're an owner operator or you are a one carrier MC authority, and you have some good brokers, if you haven't visited them in person, find a way. How can you make that happen? Or if you have to do a Zoom call, and then you can say, well, Rob, I can't get a hold of them. They only work on emails. Okay. What's the biggest opportunity that you'll capture the broker's attention? Your proof of delivery. You take a load, you make the delivery, and you say that you can email them. Hey, email the person. There's an issue with the POD. Can you please call me? Guess what? They're going to call. They're going to call you. So you capture, and then you can say, actually, sorry, the POD is okay. I just had a couple other things I wanted to go over with you. And that's where you got to find. And then here's another crazy idea. If you're picking up some big warehouse and you're seeing lots of trucks there, and you think that this broker's booking with lots of different carriers, take a piece of paper while you're in the dock and write down those carriers. And then see if you can go to the broker. If there's a way you can check, go back to your broker and saying, check these MCs for me and see what they come up as. If they're legit, if they look like they're shady characters. Some of the other tips if you have a long haul shipment, unless the carrier tells you up front, but if you have a 2-day trip and the truck that shows up is a day cab, that's a red flag. Unless they told you we have a local truck picking up for us. But the point is, you got to find a way. And if you say, well, they only email, okay, so then you have to study how to improve your email skills. There's lots of courses online. Right now, if you're running a truck, whether as an owner operator, as an MC, or you're a broker agent, you took a risk and got into this industry. You bought a truck, or you're a broker agent or broker, and you're trying to move freight, or you bought a truck. Either way, you took a risk. So first and foremost, you have to believe in yourself, because no one else is going to do it for you. And you have to find a way to forge relationships. Because remember I said, it's about who knows you. Are you findable? And you got to find a way to stand out above the crowd, because I can tell you there's more bad actors than there is good actors. And so
can I interject here real quick?
Yeah, for sure.
So my thoughts on this, I get a lot of people, and I mentioned this to somebody yesterday, that go, well, relationships don't matter. Okay, so whether you agree with that or not, the ability to create the relationship is important. So even if you create a relationship with a broker or a shipper today, and it only lasts a month, well, that covers you for the month. So if you have the skill set to do it, then, so don't ever give up the hope that relationships don't work. And, they're not going to go to golf with you or anything like that. But at the same time, if you have the skill set to create a relationship, then when they fall apart, you can just rebuild again. Okay.
But where this deep, when you say, well, what do you mean by relationships? This is where you get into deeper with them. You talk to them about their freight. Let's say you find out that you're booking some standard loads off the load boards, but maybe you found out that they moved some containers, intermodal rail containers, and they've been struggling with the drayage side of it. So it's coming in by rail, but the rail provider doesn't have enough capacity. There's a lot of areas in the United States that I can tell you that when I've booked intermodal in the past, sometimes it took me a week to get a container, not because there wasn't an available container, because they didn't have an available driver. So I'm not saying that that's the be all. I'm just using it as an example that you found this out and you started thinking about, okay, well, how much are you paying? How many loads are you doing? Does this turn into an opportunity that you realize, geez, if I got a chassis, I can do some business for you? Or there's a lane that you didn't realize. They're doing freight. Like, freight forwarders are a great source for freight, because they're bringing freight in and out of ports, and it has to get inland. So you got to have brokers that have connections to freight forwarders and have connections with freight forwarders. There's no right, there's no wrong, but ultimately you want it so that when a broker gets a project, that you're top of mind. You're going to be emailed on there like, hey, Steve, we're going to have this project. Can you get this many trucks? Right? Are you responsive to that? As you build a relationship, it has to be to that point where there's a bit of a shared risk. You both understood each other. You understand when they call you about this load, you understand their challenges and their customers' expectations. And then you start to show them, and they take a risk on you, where, example, because they built a relationship and you call them up and tell them this problem, they're going to guarantee that they're going to pay you your detention time. But they may or may not collect it from the customer, but they're going to look after you. Right? So you got to find a way. There's always a way. And so part of that requirement to get you to that next level is you got to study. When we went to school, we studied. And if you haven't been studying, well, you're behind. If you're on the road in the evenings and weekends, you shouldn't be sitting there watching Netflix all night long. You should be studying about your body, studying about your customers, studying about your truck, studying about your finances, studying about what opportunities do I have in this market? What am my marketing? How much money are you spending on marketing? Did you actually spend any money on marketing? Are you spending any money on marketing? If you're not, well, you haven't planned yourself, right? If you're not spending money on websites, you haven't taken the effort to find a way to get to meet this broker. That's marketing, right? That's if you find a way, like whether it's a Zoom, and heck, let's say you're just always think outside the box. Can't emphasize, if you're at a dock for an extended period, have a subscription to Zoom. Even if start with the free version, it gives you a 45-minute call. And if you're sitting there in the dock and it's been over 2 hours, email the broker and say, I got a problem. Can you call me? So they call, hey, can you jump onto the link with me? Sometimes just the reason I'll tell you this works. I had a problem with one of my LTL carriers the other day. The previous sales rep is on maternity leave. So I emailed this rep and they called and they said, can we jump on a video call? Sure. So he sent me I offered to offer my link. He sent me his link. We had a quick 10-minute chat, solved the problem, and it was done. And we had a quick chat about business. He asked me, hey, do you have any regular lanes that we could help look at some better discounts if you have heavier freight? Turns out he's a newer sales rep to this carrier. Where did he come from? YRC.
Oh, wow.
He was a sales rep for YRC. So again, he's trying to build a relationship with us. I'm trying to build a relationship with him at this carrier. So that relationship can mean different things to different people. But if you don't get to know them, right, over time, sorry, if you don't get to know them, their favorite football, like somebody want to just get in there and chat a little bit of what's their favorite football teams and things of that nature, where they like their activities, they like to go fishing on the weekend or whatever. But you also need to get into them. Don't just keep it superficial, because I've also seen the flip side of that. I've seen it where when I was at Coca-Cola, when I became a district manager, there were some guys that had been there for a long time, and some that going when they actually trained me when I started, but I became their manager. So we'd go out and I'd be with them, go in the car with them, and we go spend the day riding from store to store, and we park. Oh, this is my buddy. He's the coach of my son's hockey team. So you think, great. Or my kid's baseball team, or he's my neighbor. He actually is my neighbor. He's a good friend of mine. We walk in the store, and Coke is number 2. We don't have no extra displays. Pepsi's number 1. They've got displays everywhere. So, and I've seen that happen several times where he's my buddy. Well, they didn't take that friendship and evolve it to a business relationship. So there's a perception, oh yeah, he knows me well. Yeah, he knows and trusts you, but yet he didn't give you all the number 1 positions, didn't have you all the displays. So I've seen that. There's relationships and there's relationships. And it's got to be, it's a process. You got to get to know them personally, but you also need to get into the meat and bones of the business and sell deeper. And selling deeper is getting yourself so that you've built that trust, and you get to the point where brokers will expose you to freight that they don't put on load boards. That's the whole goal. And if you have good brokers that paid you 3 years ago, why aren't you working with them anymore? Because you just jumped for the money. That's why. You didn't stick through the game. How many times when the money was good, did any of you call the broker and saying, look, you're overpaying. I'll do these loads for a little bit less in exchange, making it some kind of a deal, but you're overpaying in this lane. I want this lane for a long period of time. And I know the rates are up, but you tell your customer, we're going to give a slight discount in exchange. When the prices go down, you keep paying me for a little bit longer, another month or 2. I'm not saying that's the exact, I'm just giving that scenario that I've had carriers come to me that know me and say, no, Rob, I offer them a rate and they say it's too much. You won't get the load, because they've seen it posted by other brokers, and they'll say, quote it at this. You'll get the load, and then give it to me. Guess what? I do. If I call the carrier for a quote and we discuss a rate, when I get the load, I don't just turn around and post it on a load board. I call that carrier. Hey, remember the other day we talked about this load? Yep. I just did that last week going from Vancouver to Florida. I had a flatbed load. I talked to a carrier. I got the load. I called that carrier up. And I had 3 or 4 carriers in mind, but my first carrier, I called them. Yep, we knew about it. Boom, picked it up. So it's a process, and you have to be studying this. You have to keep studying business, and it's changing fast. And those relationships that you talked about may only last a month or 2 here, and then it comes in ebbs and flows, right? It does. But guess what? It'll come back. That's what happens with me. I'll get carriers where I haven't worked with them for a while, and all of a sudden I'll do 2 or 3 or 4, and then I won't work with them for a while. But guess what? If I call a carrier, carriers call me back right away. They see it. Hey, Rob, sorry, I missed your call. What do you need? Because they know if I'm calling with something legit. I'm not wasting their time. And most of my stuff is not on load boards. Only a select amount of stuff is. So
I've noticed that. That's why it really surprised me that you said SBI has been around for 45 years. I very rarely see an SPI load on a low board ever. Like I think
Well,
I've called on a couple, but beyond that, I it's not like TQL where you see like 20 out of 100 loads is TQL. So that I believe what you're saying there.
well, we have a variety of agents out there. We have some agents. We have an agent in Idaho they have warehouse. They
Mm-hmm.
do brokering. They're down to 5. She told me they're down to 5 trucks now, but they had 16 trucks, and they've been in this business over 20 years, 25 years. And she told me this on the rendezvous because we actually had a table of us veterans that had been at SPI for a while. And she said, I'm down to 5. Only one left because of personality differences. All the other left, they retired. They stayed with me for like 20 years. And I got
Wow.
5 more that didn't quit. They didn't leave. They stuck with us the whole time. That's so that there's something to be. And we have another agent in California that's got a few trucks as well. And we got agents doing a variety of different things. But the other thing to really sit back and open your eyes to, retirement. It's really easy. And I'll tell you this because I'm feeling this exact same feeling. Super easy in this business to get busy, living life, working, taking time off, wash, rinse, repeat. Before you know it, you're 55, 60, and you look back and you realize, oh, I don't have as much retirement savings as I thought. Now what? So you really got to assess your situation. Because remember, yeah, you got a truck and it may or may not be worth a lot of money, but it's just like a home. You can say my house is worth X amount of dollars right now, then sell it, right? Because it's perceived value. We don't know. The value is great today. It may last for 10 years, but you waited to the 11th year and it became 2008 and the housing market dropped and you wanted to sell. So while our assets are definitely a value that we can gain wealth from, they're only as good as what we perceive them to be. And if we maintain them and keep them up, usually in time that does come true. But again, the time that you want to cash out, the market may have shifted and you may have to wait longer than you expected and so forth. So I cannot emphasize enough. Stop for a moment, sit down with your wife, grab a cup of coffee or tea, discuss how old you are, how many kids you got, what is your life like? Really take that time and say, what do you want to do? If your kids are teenagers, so you still got time, they're still there, so you're doing your thing, great. But when they're done, what does it look like? And Steve, I know you're kind of in the similar as myself. I'm in the situation where my kids are getting older, and 2 of them one's moved out, one's about to move out, and one just came back from a 6-month trip in New Zealand. So, and figuring life out. But then you have to think about your spouse and what your time and effort looks like when you're older. And how much money do you think you're going to need? Are you going to stay in the same town? Are you going to move? Are you going to sell this place? Are you going to buy another place? And all of that. There's no right. There's no wrong. It's all up to each of us individually. All I'm saying is as a reminder, stop, pull your head up from your day-to-day grind. Look at the 10,000-foot picture of your situation. How much debt do you have on your trucks and other debt in your life, business and personal? When do you think you're going to be debt free? And assess what is the best situation for you to achieve your financial goals. And sometimes being a one truck operator, you're on the pathway, and other times you're going to realize, yeah, doing this alone is not easy. Because when you're busy, depending on how you run, but I can tell you that I can't fathom how if you're always running and then stopping and then waiting till you get unloaded and then you find your next load, you do need someone behind the scenes to help keep an eye on the marketplace for you. If you want to keep running and maximizing your revenue, you need a dispatcher like Steve or someone similar to help you out from time to time. Sure, you want to be part of the game, and I know that sounds all good, but what's the goal? When you're sitting, unless you're one of the unusual that you let someone else drive your truck on your days off to keep that, because remember, your truck is the tool, the revenue tool for your business, and most have pride in their ride, so they don't like to let someone else slip seat and use their truck. So if they're not working, it's not moving. The wheels aren't turning. What does that mean? You're not making revenue. So, unless you're the unusual. So if you're not, when you are working, you need either yourself or someone else that's behind the scenes helping you study what's going on to maximize your revenue, building relationships on your behalf. Because if you're behind the wheel and you're doing a 15-mile run, how are you doing that? You can't be on load boards. Like, unless I'm wrong, you tell me, Steve, how easy is that for a driver who does, say, 1,500-mile trips a week? Maybe no one's doing that. Everyone's doing short trips. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, we can get that. That could be a whole different can of worms. But I wanted you to touch on the cargo.
Yeah. So we're right into there.
Cargo stuff. I'm going to take this call real quick and then, but keep talking.
Okay. So the first thing to be aware of, again, if you're a small carrier, and what brokers are looking at nowadays is in 2010 to 2016, if there was a verdict settlement, say there was an injury, some sort of injury claim, the general rule was 2 million payout. Now in 2023, a verdict settlement, the average payout $23.8 million. So this is where being by yourself, and if you had a situation happen, can wipe you out. It can, because remember, with the 23.8 million payouts on verdicts of injuries, etc., insurance companies are going after the carrier, the shipper, the broker, anyone who was involved in that freight. They're going to find a way to hold you accountable. That's the gist. So, number one, as we get into the cargo theft, but when you're a one carrier operator, really dive into your insurance policy. Progressive, which is the typical go-to insurance company. This is kind of jumping ahead, but with Progressive, 44 claims submitted, 44 declined. Why? Exclusions. The Progressive policy, if you think that you're on a Progressive policy and you're covered and you're protecting your parties involved, you're not. And you'll have to prove me otherwise and prove many other people otherwise. So Progressive allows people to get in, but in fact, someone had a meeting with Progressive and that's their stick. They have, it's a cheap policy with exclusions to prevent them from paying out anything, essentially. So it's very, very difficult to get a settlement out of Progressive claims, insurance policies, because that. So if you have study, it sounds boring. If you don't want to read it, call your insurance broker and saying, do you have a webinar or do you have a thing where someone can help me convert my insurance policy into normal language, right? If it's, because hey, there's a lot of funky words in there that you may or may not understand. If you read it yourself, you'd be like, okay, I'm going to highlight this word and highlight this word and highlight this word. You're like, wow. So you got to find someone that's, if you can interpret it and understand it, great. If you can't, there's no problem with that. Just get someone to help you, but study, understand your particular policy and what exclusions there are. If a carrier, and ask your brokers. If you're just picking up standard freight, just ask them, what's the value of the load? Start tracking it. Enter it into your TMS. If you have a decent TMS, it's going to have a box for the value of the load. And you can pull reports. And you're going to say, well, I don't use a TMS. Again, study. TMS is there for a couple of reasons. One, if you actually use a TMS, you're learning how to dispatch, how everyone does it, how to enter loads. That will help you that if you ever need to transition to a different role in a trucking company or in a brokerage, you understand how a TMS works. So you've added a skill set to your toolbox. Number two, TMS, if you've added good data, because remember, technology is only as good as the data inputted. So if you enter all the details of your loads and all the arrival times, departure times, rates, guess what? A good TMS you can run a report on time arrivals and departures. That's a good talking point for your brokers when you're trying to deep sell, that you can bring up that report. Hey, I did 20 loads with you this year. 2 of them I was late. The rest of them, I was always early. And then I had one late delivery because of that snowstorm, but the rest are all there. So that's a great selling point to bring up to them. Because remember, when you're deep selling to a broker, you may be working with a specific broker agent, but you want to also, those broker agents may come and go, especially if it's a employee style. You want to get some of the management in there as well, where you're connecting with them, LinkedIn. And just think, if a broker doesn't have any LinkedIn exposure at all, that's a red flag. We should all be on LinkedIn to some degree. I know some people don't like it, but it's a norm, because just look at your situation. If you don't have a LinkedIn, a website, when you have all of these things, you create the consistency. You can create a YouTube channel with your logo. You create your LinkedIn profile with your logo, your website with your logo, and then leverage your website to offer information about your services. You can direct people there. Hey, you want to see the lanes I run, the equipment I use, etc. So into the cargo theft. Give me 1 second here. Now, I don't think I can give you the exact details that I gave Steve, just because I don't want it to be out there, that in case this is obviously on the internet and or on the YouTubes, and well, if criminal person was to hear this, well, they know that there's a lot of people investigating them and finding out all their what their strategies are. So I'm gonna have to kind of keep it a little bit more top line than what I provided you. But
Okay, thank you.
The main point is that we weren't the amount of cargo theft happening and the speed in which it's happening, the industry wasn't ready. And if you think I haven't had a problem, well, you may have not, but trust me, it's out there. The thing that I can tell you, I'm not going to give you the stats of which states, but I can just, this Scott Cornell, he used to be a driver. He's now in charge of this insurance cargo theft company. Essentially, all the states, the major core city states, have dropped or reduced the number of officers investigating cargo theft. This company, Scott Cornell, his company, they have agents, I don't know, 20, close to 20 agents around the United States that are available to do stuff. And he will answer questions, etc. And you can look it up, Steve, as we're doing this. Maybe you could look up, as I'm talking, Scott Cornell insurance cargo theft, and see if his name comes up. And it's it will say it on there. But actually, you know what? I can tell you which company he's with. It's going to be
Travelers?
Yes, that's the one, Travelers. So if you ever have questions or want to better understand, but this, when you hear some of the top line information, open your eyes up as you're going around to different facilities, picking up and delivering. And when you see potential situations, use that to talk to your brokers, right? If you saw that a shipper has a bad practice for something that puts them at risk, call your broker, call the customer you're working with, and educate them, saying, can we have a conversation about this? How I think that you guys are at risk for potential cargo theft, etc. So there's no silver fix to this situation with cargo theft, but it's very complex right now. It's happening fast. And his belief is that it's going to take the entire supply chain to fix it. Remember I talk about that? I've always talked about that before on my channel and other videos. Think of this industry as not just I'm a trucker. I'm an asset within the supply chain. Always, again, studying, taking that minute to study. Where does my brokers and the loads I haul fit into supply chains? Are we at the raw commodity to the finished products? And so there's essentially, there's two types of theft. So let me ask you this. If a carrier is holding a load hostage, is that theft?
No.
Right. It's not. So if a carrier says, I'm not going to deliver your load until you do the following. If a broker calls the local police, they're not going to write on the report theft, because it's not. So just know that. The biggest thing is to recognize is with the cargo theft situation, their the two skill sets that cargo thieves have that we can all learn from them, from being a broker and a carrier, they focus on ROI, return on investment, and they focus on what to sell, what to steal, and when to steal it. So they're very complex right now. The highest, they actually adjust their strategies based on the economy. So what would you, and Steve, you answered this, so I'll kind of let, you can give the answer, but what are the top 2 or 3 commodities for theft?
Beverages and electronics. And beverages, stuff like soda and beer, they tend to not decrease in sales. In fact, they increase in sales when the economy tanks. So, but yeah, that's my guess right there.
You're correct. And energy drinks, because energy drinks, there's some countries out there that have banned them. So from a return on investment, if they can get them out of the United States and put them onto ocean and ship them to countries, their return on investment is much higher, because it's a commodity that regular you can't buy. You have to buy them from the black market. These cargo thefts are so sophisticated, they're stealing the product and they're creating sophisticated sales websites on there. So the reason that things like say frozen foods, I won't give an exact product, but let's just take frozen foods. Frozen foods is a great one to steal, because if they steal and say they take off 2-4 skids and leave the rest of the trailer, well, they take 2 or 4 skids, upsell it, sell it to a market somewhere, and they make good money. And the rest of the load, do you think once a reefer load, well, no one's going to, the investigators, after 24 hours, even if they recover that load and found the trailer, what can they do with it? Nothing. They're going to have to toss out that load. Mm-hmm. So whereas electronics, if they steal electronics, the investigators can chase it for months to better understand, because they have serial numbers. They can investigate it. Things like consumables are harder to investigate. So that's one of the reasons they sell it. It's good return on investment. So again, yeah, the 2 key qualities: they know what to steal, when to steal it, and they focus on return on investments. And so if people are not spending money on TVs, they're not stealing TVs, because what's the point? No one wants to buy them. They have no money. So they buy what, just like you said, people will buy drinks and stuff. So there's 2 types. There's the basic. One of the key ones is AB5, because AB5, there's been a huge growth in Phoenix, and those of you who are on here, you would agree with this and know this, that in Phoenix there's a certain area, I think, what was it, Highway 303 or 3 something, Steve?
Mm-hmm.
That,
yeah, I'm not sure,
but somewhere's in Phoenix, there's been a huge growth of warehouses. And see, part of the kicker is a lot of times California to Phoenix has been a bad market for cargo theft, because a lot of drivers like to leave California, drive to Phoenix to get the cheaper fuel, and they'll follow along behind those trucks and box trucks and other ones. And then when you stop for fuel, they will open the doors and steal the stuff. So
101.
And now, sorry?
101.
They said Highway 3. Yeah, Phoenix.
Oh, okay.
The 303.
Okay, go ahead.
So the gist is, it's called
I see that highway. Yeah. Right.
It's called pilfering. So basically, there's the outright stealing, where a thief steals product from the trailer and takes it off. But nowadays, it's very sophisticated. They will launder the freight. There's a variety of things they'll do, but I'll give an example. And these groups, they will get into where they will have call centers in other countries. And when they see a load, they actually have people doing surveillance. They pick where they believe that certain facilities have the goods they want to steal. They will park people out there to monitor it. If they see the same trucks going in and out, what they'll do, they'll get a trailer, try to mimic the logo. They'll send the driver in a couple hours. If the drivers, they see, okay, all the time they're coming in at 1 o'clock, they'll send the driver at like 11:30. They'll play street drama. They'll come in, I forgot my paperwork and all this. They make themselves look just like an employee. The warehouse sees the truck and the trailer, and they see the guy. They think that he looks just like it. So, we know the load you need. They give it to this driver. 2 hours later, the real driver shows up, and they found out that load, got taken. So they're doing surveillance. Sometimes they get so sophisticated, they will get one of their people hired at that warehouse to be an inside person. The other things that are happening is they'll launder the freight. Let's say that I'll use TVs or cell phones. So there's a truckload of TVs. They will have it picked up and go into take it to a warehouse. So what they do is they first off, the cargo theft team will use their circle of their customer service team. They'll pilfer a brokerage, set themselves up to make themselves look legit, convince the broker, they get the load. And then what they do is since they're not really a real carrier, they actually then hire a real carrier to go and pick up the load. But instead of delivering it to a Best Buy or Walmart or Costco or something, they tell them deliver it to this 3PL warehouse. So it comes into the door as TVs. They go in, they'll take off, they'll keep 2 skids, change the paperwork, make it look like it's supposed to be 2 skids. They deliver the 2 skids to the actual place where it was supposed to go. So the freight got picked up and delivered, but they've modified, they got these big warehouses, go to another big warehouse. They see the manifest saying the load number, yep. And it says on the manifest, 50 TVs on 2 skids, okay. And they check it in and receive it. Meanwhile, if there was 15 or say 16 pallets, they kept the 2. There's 14 skids. They now took those other 14 skids that they kept, changed the paperwork to make it look like electronics, transfer it to another warehouse, then rechange the paperwork again to freight of all kind, FAK, get it onto ocean freight, and it's gone. And they'll do this because think about it. If you have a big company, they have sending out POs to buyers who hire through their logistics team, use a broker to the carrier. So there's a whole bunch of layers. By the time these guys are laundering this freight, because they can do this, they're delivering 2 skids, delivering 3 skids, delivering 2 skids instead of the full truckloads. All of a sudden, 3 or 4 weeks goes by. Then the purchaser realizes, why are we out of these TVs so quick? Like, we should have so much. And then they realize, but meanwhile, they did this 5, 6, 7, 8 times where they put a few out and they kept the rest. So it's very sophisticated.
It's not just 2 guys cutting the lock off the trailer.
Absolutely not. Someone asked at our meeting to the Scott if there's one country. He says a few years ago we could narrow it down to about 2 or 3 countries. He says it's so rampant right now, and most of it is actually, you think it's just say some biker gang. There's a little bit of in Canada. There's a little bit of it is biker gangs, but most of it in the United States are foreign entities.
Did they go over what states have the biggest cargo theft? Like, I know when I was at Landstar, they had a whole big meeting and they said that Texas was one of the top places, especially Dallas.
Yeah, Texas is, Florida, California, and now Phoenix is in the top 10.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Phoenix is in the top 10. So, so they basically... they know a lot. They're doing a lot of things in there. So I'm just trying to keep it where I'm giving you enough information. But they are doing some very sophisticated things in there. So they'll plant a member, like I talked about. So they're doing a lot of the double brokering business. And let me just see here. I'm just going to pull up my other note here.
Yeah, while you're looking at your notes, Dan's Hotshot says... Big Rig Becca just posted her brother's truck with a load of lumber was stolen. I believe the truck and trailer had been recovered, but load and equipment gone.
Oh.
Yep. So sorry to hear that.
Well, here's the other thing. If you had a load taken, flatbed loads are obviously harder, but the best thing is, as a carrier, one of the things you can start to do, take pictures of your loads, making sure that the paperwork's accurate. And if a situation happens where there's something stolen, report it right away. The faster you report it, the sooner it can get investigated. That's the one thing we can kind of tell you in there. Sorry about this. I'm not too sure where I put this piece here. Just had kind of I think. Oh, there we go. Sorry, there we go. I got it now. So, so basically, they talk about point of pickup at the shipper. So part of this is that a lot of it is just being aware and training. So, point of pickup. This is the time that we need to educate brokers. When you hear a broker saying, "I want a picture of the driver in front of the truck holding a specific number to prove that it's live and legit," and you're gonna say, "This is a real pain. Why do I have to do it?" Because of the theft. We know what these guys are doing. They will go on there and they'll Velcro license plates over top, so it looks like a legit thing, but then they just pull it off and it changes. So shippers should be going around to the trailer, not looking at the logos. Are they easily peeled off? Because you know that. Why would you be able to peel off a logo so easy? Shouldn't, right?
Right.
So that's a red flag. If check the license plate, if it comes off, that's a red flag. So basically, they have to train frontline staff to raise awareness, document, copy all information on the CDL. They said you should really cross-reference identification to ensure driver's handwritten is legible. Oh, here's the classic example. They'll talk about when you are as a broker, these cargo theft rings, when they talk and you start, because a lot of them, see, they don't know much about freight. So they're trying to figure it out. But if you are trying to book a load and they have this hesitant laugh, like they give this nervous laugh, that's a red flag. There's a lot of little things like, "Oh, don't worry, we'll look after it really good for you," and all this stuff. Like, so it's just there's red flags to be aware of.
I think just being aware. I had a friend of mine that posts on Facebook that he had to actually honk the horn for the broker to hear. It's getting kind of ridiculous, but just being aware. When I was at Landstar, because of the cargo theft, especially if you're in the Fort Worth yard, they had a lot of tips and tricks, because they had like 5 trucks over Thanksgiving Day weekend that were full of electronics that were all ripped off.
Well, and that's
the other
fact. Go ahead.
I was going to say the other trick that I've heard was in a drop lot. There was a friend of mine that said their company had a bunch of trailers stolen because the truck showed up with, ABC towing and trailer repair, something like that, and they were able to get out the guard shack with the trailers, and by the time they figured it out, decals are gone and the freight was gone.
Well, to my point when I talked about how they launder the freight, when you are picking up when you're picking up your load, take a look at the shipper's addresses, and if they're different, if you're told by the broker deliver to this location, or like the person that booked you load asked you to deliver the load to someplace different that doesn't match the shippers, you're gonna have to. Now sometimes they'll say this is a blind shipment, but somewhere in there you're gonna need to verify that piece of it. So you should have your spidey senses up. CDN out of van, flat reefers. I would say van and reefer.
Why is that?
Well, just because with vans, they'll try to it's because flatbed. Well, it's just harder to get to. They can do it. It's not saying they're all susceptible, but return on investment, right? There's multiple ways in which that they can steal from it, right? Because you can, like flatbed, it's a little hard. It's just harder because it's heavy, right? Like think about that. Even if you had a load of steel and they want to steal it, well, you often if it's long pieces, you're going to need a forklift or something. Whereas a van, they could open up the back door, back up to it, and just start ripping stuff off pallets, individual boxes.
Right.
And same with reefer. If you have a load of meat, shrimp, frozen, whatever, high-end frozen something, well, it's in pallets, and you can just start ripping that apart. And anyone that's done reefer, how expensive some of those loads are worth. The average, here's how this will put the gist of it. The average return on investment that these guys look at, because when they look at energy drinks and stuff, between $200,000 to $212,000. So why do you think they're targeting the trucking industry? Pretty good return on investment to compare to trying to steal from something else.
Right. To Gary Cook's question, if a trailer has a temporary plate, is that a red flag? Absolutely. And as a matter of fact,
yes, 100%.
There's a lot of states, I know Michigan's one of them, that you cannot haul a load in a temp tag trailer. So when I picked up my new trailer in Michigan, I I had a choice. I can have my wife send me the plate. I didn't have the paperwork ready yet to do that, or I could take the temp tag and at least move the trailer back to Missouri where I can get it plated. But yes, that is a red flag, and that's why it's illegal in many places to haul a load with a temp tag trailer.
Well, here's a couple of the quick red flags. So the carrier calling you has no profile on the load board where the load is posted. They resist providing key details such as driver or equipment information. Tractor information does not match safer website. Seems very eager to get the deal done and skip over details. Will not provide photos or arrive at shipper with temp or proper placards. Arrive at the shipper for other OTR load with a day cab, meaning like if it's a long load and they're showing up with a day cab, unless it's like, I mean, some companies will do that. Swift and mega carriers will do that where they have their day driver goes and picks up the load and brings it to the yard for the line haul. It does happen, as long as you communicate that.
Yeah.
Nervous laughter, long pauses, or questions that should be basic. That's one there. The other one is their fleet size does not match their revenues in miles. The FMCSA fleet size doesn't match their application. The carrier software report or other similar shows inspections that don't match where they were trying to load or the length of time in business. The contract information you're getting doesn't match the website, FMCSA, other sources, phone numbers, addresses. Emails don't line up. They will do funky things with emails. So number one rule, don't click the link. With emails, when you talk about bad emails, sometimes like you'll get an email. So imagine this: 2 V's in an email. So if they put something in there and they put 2 V's, it may try to make it look like a W. An R and an N together look like an M. So pay attention. Because I get an email often from our president, and I'm like, he only emails me once in a blue moon. And I could tell by the email, I look at it and I can tell it's fake. So be very, very cautious on your emails. When you're opening an email, you think, oh, this looks like the person I know. Triple check. Look at the email. There'll be something funky about it. Even if it looks close, there'll be something funky about it. Okay. Here's the other one. Random call. Oh, so here's the other. So fleet size. Oh, yeah. So the emails don't line up. Random call to change the point of contact or billing information. Refuse any attempts to use tracking or digital footprints. Meaning, right? So if you're refusing, I don't want to use the broker's tracking, well, you're a red flag, especially if it's a high value load.
Well, nowadays they're putting right on the rate con that if you don't, like, in other words, you'll get, let's say you got 1,500 for the load, they're putting 1,000 line haul and then 100 for tracking, 100 for check calls, 100, and you don't get that extra 500 until after the load's done, and it, because I have to read, like, if we get a rate con that has that, we have to get a new rate con with everything added afterwards before we can invoice, and so that's how they're dealing with that.
And here's the sequence. So it will go like this: a load is brokered, bad guys given load, they double broker steal, they falsify the delivery confirmation, and then over time, then it finally an audit reveals the load's never delivered. So they'll do that. Here's the other thing. So how these cargo thieves and cargo rings are doing: they purchase lots of MC numbers. So they offer to purchase of an MC number, one-off or in bulk, various methods to purchase. Industry adjusts. So monitor for contact changes, monitor for ownership changes. Bad guys adjust. So they'll purchase and then other additional funds for emails, phone numbers, and so forth. So so you have to really just keep your eyes open and use those opportunities. Like that's what these guys look for now. So even as a broker, if you are posting freight, you as much as you want to put detail, if you put too much detail, you're telling, hey, I got a high value load over here. Come over here. I got this high value load. When you put team driver, like a lot of high value loads now require team drivers and so forth. But again, as a broker, I'd be educating my shippers to avoid running high value loads over the weekend, even if they want
Yeah.
teams, because it just that weekend offers the opportunity. Some brokers won't send it. Yeah, until tracking is accepted. So,
Well, those are good thoughts. Let's address Jackknife TV. He goes, "Well, the future of trucking as a small business owner looks very bleak. It doesn't look like things are going to be fun at all. Maybe it's time to start looking at something different." What are your thoughts on when someone tells you that? Because you probably hear that every now and then.
well, I would say it depends how long you've been in the business. Go back to why you got in the business in the first place. The thing I'd say to you, Jackknife, is that if you change to another industry and say you became an oil field guy or you worked as an electrician and you've always done things the same way for 25 years and you're not open to change with AI, we brought up a thing, HI and AI, human interaction and artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is here, but HI is just still as most important as well, human interaction. AI is to help make certain tasks we do more efficient, so that we have more time for the HI. So the point I would say is, if you think changing to another field is going to give you better financial long term, maybe so, but are you willing to change to meet the new standards of that industry? And every industry is going through this. I mean, there's talk when we see a big building being built that it's going to be all robots loading stuff, not, it's going to be all done with intelligence. We don't know how soon, but the point is that I think it's just that look at why you got into the business, why you chose to go on your own. And if you're doing all the steps, it's just that with one truck and all the insurance that's out there and the requirements, I'm not saying it's bad. The message here is evaluate who you're working with. If you're a one truck operator and you are taking these higher risk loads where you're a reefer and you take a lot of high value reefer loads, are you truly protected with your insurance policy? And are you truly protecting your shippers? And that's all it means, is that you just may need to adjust. It's just that with the amount of stuff that things are happening so fast, and when you're busy driving, you can't be effectively staying on top of all these tools and unless you're working, like I said, if you're an anomaly where you're working with the same brokers, you got 3 or 4 brokers, that's all you work with, you don't even have to go to load boards. They call you up, hey, Jackknife, I got another load for you. And it's the same person, you've done this load 20 times. Sure, on the fly, you can grab that load. Yep, I'm driving right now. Send me the rate con. I'll accept it when I stop. But if you're trying to post your truck, driving down the road, taking calls from multiple brokers, that's when you need a dispatcher, because it takes time and effort to vet those people to ensure that you're working with the right. Like they can say, "Oh yeah, this sounds good. I know this load. Yeah, this sounds familiar. The rate's pretty good. Sure, I'm interested." And you make a bad decision once because you're trying to be quick. So that's all it is. To say, is it bad for it? No. I believe you good operators just need to stand up and let the people you're working with know you are a good operator. There's a lot of bad ones out there. And it's amazing how many times, like I said, I can go through and punch in. I went through another lane. I punched in the first 4 carriers that I looked at, I couldn't use them. So there's a lot of bad actors out there is the summary. So if you're a good carrier, stand up and shout. The old Dr. Zeus, where the little Z or Y is the final letter that makes it so they're heard. You need to stand up and make yourself heard. You need to be a little bit selfish and making sure that the parties you're working with, like, I'm legit. I'm not going to mess you over. I'm doing real business here. Freight's not going to be stolen. I'm looking after you, looking after your customers. And you need to find a way to educate the parties you're working with that you are a good player and that they need you as much as you need them.
Excellent words, my friend. I appreciate that.
I don't know if that answered Jackknife's question, but that's all I'd say is just if you're struggling where you're just bebopping in the spot market, That's what I would be like. Okay, maybe I need to either figure out what lanes I need to focus on, or if I like bebop in the spot market, then get some people around you. Surround yourself with other successful people.
I agree.
What's Gary Cook's
Is it
question?
the brokers or shippers using the tracking apps? I think it's both because I know, like I've done loads for Coyote, right? Where Coyote needed tracking from their app on my phone, but Coca-Cola wanted the tracking off of Four Kites for their system, and so knowing that Coyote and Four Kites were following me, when the broker called and said, "Hey, do you have a status update?" I'm like, "Yeah," and I kind of mentioned it's like, "Yeah." He goes, "Yeah, a lot of drivers have trouble with that." I said, "Well, because they look at the tracking and think, well, you're tracking me on two different things, so you should know where I'm at." It's like, "Yeah, well, Four Kites is mainly for Coca-Cola and or whatever I was using, and then we have our app, but I wanted verification as well." And this was like several years ago before the fraud became rampant. So,
And also a shipper, if they've had any theft, there could be a situation where they plant similar to like an Apple iPod tracker or something similar, where they plant it in the freight, and you may not know. And they're not doing it to track so much your truck, like you're actually driving, the speed and everything else. They're tracking it so that if the freight, all of a sudden they see that it's been a certain period of time, they can see where it is if it gets
the
stolen.
the other thing I will say is that Schneider, when I was the owner operator at Schneider, they were one of the first mega carriers to have tracking devices on their trailers, and then they used that as a selling point to go into the customers. Hey, we have real time tracking on your freight that's on our trailers, and that was a selling point. And I use that as a selling point with our ELD. I can say, hey, I'll give you the Samsara link, and and the driver I've got now, he is tremendously good at all communications. I've had to create a separate folder just for his check calls because after every load or during every load he emails when he shows up, he emails a picture of the bills when he's leaving, and he sends a picture of the freight tied down in the trailer. He takes a picture of the lock, he takes a picture of the seal and the lock, and he communicates very well. And I know Shannon's talked about that. She's really good at communication. And if the brokers are worried about cargo theft, then utilize that, manipulate that, capitalize on that. Hey, this is, I know you're going to give me your tracking apps, but I'll also give you a link to the LD. I'll do a check call every so often. Use that for leverage versus the guy's like, what rate, in the email, so
Well, and also
utilize that.
and actually, if you could be proactive with the brokers you're working with, where at the load, just like you said, you're taking a picture of the seals, and if the shippers aren't putting a seal, you put one and take a picture and saying this is the seal I'm putting on, and have the shipper write that seal number on the paperwork, so that the copy the driver has and the copy that the shipper had matches. This way, if you were stopped by a DOT officer and they were going to examine your shipment, if they broke the seal, they're required to replace it. That's just like customs, right? If you put a seal on and the custom officer breaks it to examine the freight, they're going to put a new one on, but they're going to give you the old one back so that you have the consistency and you can see
Right.
that's happening. So the more that you're proactive on those things, and if you're a person where you have a regular load that gets you home, where you get to go home, you pick it up, and then you park on the weekend. If you're just parking in a little lot somewheres, you might have to spend some money and rent a secured lot with cameras, right? All those little things where,
Oh yeah.
those are just like little things. So just take a moment, study. How can you improve your operations? How do you focus on your safety right now? Do you have like really if you own your own truck or you're one carrier authority, while you're driving that truck, and then when you get out of that truck, you have to look at it as if, okay, I'm the manager evaluating that driver. How would you
Yeah.
evaluate yourself?
Yeah, I
Right?
did a video. Yeah, that was one of my topics one time. Would you hire yourself? Would you hire
That's
you?
exactly.
Yeah.
So that's
Well,
exactly it. So that's kind of the hopefully that made sense, but that's kind of the gist. There's a bunch of little things, but that's kind of just saying, just be aware. It's very, very sophisticated what's happening with the cargo thefts around the United States, and the rings and how they're doing it. So,
Well, the attitude too, right? So I once talked to a driver that this is years ago when I was at Landstar, and you know, and it's like when I was at Schneider, it was a requirement to lock every trailer. Now a lock only stops you know, an honest man or a lazy thief, but if a broker calls and say, hey, did you put a lock on the trailer? And you go, well, they're not going to steal this. This isn't worth stealing. It's like it. Basically, what I'm getting at is there are some loads that don't require seals, right? Like 8 rolls of paper usually don't get a seal. But I still put my own seal on. Like I'll go to the truck stop, buy the seals. Landstar, they used to give us them by the fistful, and I would still write down the seal number. I would still show the lock because you want to show that you care, and they're more likely going to use you than the person like, I don't need to lock it. So I mean, attitude is a big part of it as well, in my opinion. So,
and the other thing I was going to mention, when we talk about studying, there is a lot of stuff that if you're currently, say, for example, driving down the road and you're downloading audiobooks, that's great. But my suggestion would be utilizing like Spotify, download podcasts. There's tons of stuff, like there's Everything Logistics. She did Blythe. She did a LinkedIn. She was one of our guests last year at Rendezvous. She has a channel. She's interviewed many people with SPI. If you look up SPI on her channel, her podcast, Chris Jolly, he's the freight coach. He's on YouTube. He's on Spotify. He's another agent, but he has some social media influence. He, in fact, hosted our management panel, and he talks lots of good stuff about freight and what he's doing. Go to on YouTube and you look up SPI Logistics. They have their own YouTube channel. You can get all kinds of people in there. You see myself. I've been interviewed. Many agents. If you go on that SPI Logistics one, you'll hear the agent stories. And you'll say, well, geez, how do I get this freight? That's the hard part. There's no silver bullet. The only thing you could do is if you go to the SPI website, there's a section in there for carriers. And there's a way that you can click through our website to get where you'll be onboarding via highway. And then once you're onboarded, then you have to go through the process with the whole onboarding thing. And if you have problems, you can message Steve, and I can assist there. And if you need help, I can help you assist. And once you're in there, we then have on our website where we'll say get freight, and then there'll be a button to click to register. And then that will be, again, not all of our agents are good at doing it, but that's an internal load board. So when we create a load, there's a button that says post to this board. It's like an internal board. Those freight will show up there. So some agents are really good at it, some are not, but that's one way to get freight. And it's just a matter of timing, where all of a sudden you found one load, and then you meet figure out this agent where they have freight in this lane, and all of a sudden one thing leads to another. It's no simple clear-cut answer. Where there's things being worked on to help streamline that to match carriers to agent lanes. But it's a process, I must say. Like Steve says, not a lot of the freight is on the load boards. Some of it is, but once you get in there and you see it, they're phenomenal. They have a lot of stuff in place to help the carriers, to help the agents, and to be successful.
All right. So, Gary Cook, can a DOT officer legally break a seal? And the answer is yes. Check securement. Also, Scorpion says, yes, I've had one break my seal while they gave me an inspection. They were checking to see if my load was secured. It was, and they gave me a new seal with paperwork to prove what happened.
Exactly. And also, if you're in certain states where they feel, especially towards the Mexican borders and stuff, in case they feel they have people inside. Right. Mm-hmm. And if there's been a certain area with higher reported cargo theft. Mm-hmm. So there you go. Cheap Freight Hauler. Great stuff to hear.
Good deal.
So, but that's right, the gist. So, well, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. Hopefully it wasn't too boring, but I just wanted to put the message out there, and hopefully this gets replayed. You can chop it up. I'm hoping that you go back, but yeah, when you're studying, so studying wise, study Steve's channels, Jeff Stano's, Sage's, my channel, Chris Jolly. go, and if you look up, we have there's another fellow, but if you just look up SPI Logistics on the internet, you're going to find lots. Blythe has been really good with her marketing stuff on that. Everything's logistics. And then your body. What's the most important thing you can do is study our bodies to stay healthy. Kelly Starrett, the Ready State, study him. Tons and tons of great information. He's been around for a lot of years. Ben Patrick, knees over toes guy, study him. Phenomenal information there. I won't bore the details, but Kelly Starrett and the Ready State for mobility, and Ben Patrick and the knees over toes program for reversing out pain, longevity, building strength in a proper way, and flexibility at the same time. Fantastic stuff to study.
Well, I appreciate your time and effort. It's funny. You do have some obvious non-fans, but we got up to 85 people, and it's been as high as 85, and people have stayed. So obviously, you're hitting some good nerves as well as triggering some people. But I mean, that's you can't be a podcaster without being that way, right? So, but
yeah,
Rob, as usual, man, you've been very insightful. I've been looking forward to this interview ever since you told me what you would learn when you came back from Nashville. And because of our schedules, it's been hard to kind of pinpoint. We tried to do this recorded, but I think this worked out a little bit better. And I'm glad your time and my time was able to allow this to happen.
And I think if you chop this up a little bit, it'll play together quite nicely. So
yeah, I'm definitely going to take the time to chop this up and then maybe get a few shorts out of this. And then meanwhile, if you want the book that he talked about, here it is. Here's the link. Follow the Amazon link, and that helps support the channel as well. And then also CDN Freight Broker also has his own channel. Let's see if we can put a link up for that. That way you get some, I know it's been difficult for you to put up some videos, but if I get some shorts out of here, I will definitely help you out with them.
Excellent.
Like we did last time.
Well, thanks for your time. And like I said, sometimes I'm boring, but I'm just giving factual information to help everyone.
No, and I appreciate that. You've definitely been a big help for a lot of people that are in this chat, and then myself included. So thank you, CDN. You have a good day. If you need anything, don't hesitate to call me.
All right. Thanks so much, everyone.
Yep. Hey, this is Snorelord. Thanks for watching this clip from one of my live feeds. If you don't mind, hit the thumbs up, subscribe, and we try to go live, and we try to do some recorded videos. And hit the thumbs up, and it helps the algorithms. It helps the YouTube, Google gods. So thanks for watching.